All right, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Tuesday, August 19th, 2025, 7:05 p.m. Eastern. David Gonzales on the other side of the country in Arizona. But Pete, how are you? What's going on, brother?
Doing good. Just thrilled to have David here with us.
Yeah. So David, welcome. So I'm going to let Pete do the introductions. He's spoken incredibly high about you since you agreed to be a guest on the 10-4 Tavern. He couldn't say enough things, so why should I even try to do it? I'm going to let Pete introduce you to the group.
Yeah, Tommy, look, we like cops, and we also understand that nobody hates a dirty cop more than an honest cop. But bringing David here means a lot to me. I'll tell you why. When I first got out to Arizona as a brand new group supervisor, I didn't even know how to get home from work yet. I had to use the GPS to get back and forth. Something came on my desk where an agent from El Paso, his sister stopped to aid a stranded motorist, and it was all a ruse. It wasn't a stranded motorist. He murdered her and stole her cell phone and her car. And we got word, based on what was left in his abandoned car, that he might be heading to Phoenix. I had met David a couple days earlier. Didn't know anybody from the Marshal Service yet. I was brand new in Phoenix. My boss knew him, but my boss was out of town. And David gave me a business card. So here I am, some brand new group supervisor, calling the US Marshal himself, explaining the situation, saying, I need help. Can you send me some guys? Because I know that the Marshals are the best manhunters in the country. And they also had that cell phone technology. So David asked me, where are you going to be, in half an hour? And the next thing I know, I have a phalanx of US Marshal deputies coming in with the technology to help us with the case. And within 4 hours of that clown crossing the Arizona border, thanks to the Marshals, we had him in handcuffs. A couple other great cases I got to work with David. I needed his help when we had a guy that was trafficking 50 caliber rifles to Mexico. One of them killed a Mexican military commander in a daycare center. The guy was underground big time, brought David's folks in. He brought in a super secret plane that they had back in the days. It's no longer a secret since the days of Escobar getting taken down. And this guy popped his head out of a mine down in the Valley area. And within moments, we had him in custody. And then finally, just to tell you that he's a cop's cop, we had a guy that we were picking up for a burglary. His deputies came out, Matt Hershey and Eric Brown, same two deputies we work with most often. And this guy rammed their car, right? Yep. Like, plowed through their car. Then he hit my task force officer's car. It disintegrated. It was a Monte Carlo. Then he hit my car, pushed me out of the way. We got in a big foot chase. We lost the guy. He dumped the Glock while he was running. So this was like a 3-day, no sleep manhunt. And, David called me, see how I was doing, hurt my back. And so finally, we find out where this guy is. And we're out there, and the DPS came out with their huge Bearcat, the giant vehicle. And they had a guy coming out of the port on the top. And all of a sudden, we see on the second floor house where we believe this guy was barricaded, an air conditioner comes flying out of the window.
Yep.
The suspect, his name was Sheldon Hanshaw, right behind it. And he landed on his back. If that was me landing that way, I would be talking to you after I push my wheelchair in here by blowing into a hose. But this guy got up and sprints, and there's a chase over fences, through backyards. So we finally tackled this guy. It was me and Eric Brown. And I turn around, and who's standing right over my shoulder in the field with the truth? But David. So we cuffed him up, got him in there. Guy got 40 years. U.S. Attorney's Office wouldn't prosecute him, but the state did. 40 years in prison for ramming our cars and for the burglary. So those are 3 cases. David helped with so much more. But such an honor to have a cop's cop here and a true leader. So David, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and good to see you, Pete. And I wish you were back in Arizona. Probably some bittersweet moments here and there, but it's times like this where you remember and understand, what we've done in the past, but you move on and understand the brotherhood of law enforcement, and which a lot of people do not understand, and especially in these times where. Law enforcement has gone through some very difficult times, but I think we're on a comeback now, and it's good to see.
Yep. So this is what we're going to do in the 10-4 Tavern. As always, David and Pete and I, we kind of try to make this environment like we're bellying up in a gin mill or a bar somewhere or a tavern. So that's what we're doing. So Pete, I know you're drinking Espolon Reposado tequila. Coincidentally, I'm drinking Tres Agaves tequila as well. So for those of you who do drink tequila and mezcal, I'm gonna probably follow it up with a mezcal later. Way. Only do the 100% stuff. Don't do that stuff with the fillers in there. That's how you get. That's how you get wild. But David, I know said you were drinking some tea, but if you feel like changing it up later, just let us know. And
well, I'm drinking some tea because it's only 4 o'clock here in Arizona. You know, we don't drink till you know, 6, 7. You know, and I'm kind of a bourbon guy personally. I like a nice smooth bourbon.
Well, there you go. We've had some bourbon. We had on the 6th with Dan Linsky, who focuses on giving back to the military. And then I think in the future somewhere there's a Responder bourbon coming out of Terre Haute, Indiana. I think we'll get them on in the future too. So we like that they're giving back to the communities we love and are attached to so much. So with that, David, welcome. 50 years law enforcement. Yeah. I can't even imagine. It's truly a lifetime for you, I'm sure. And all the great things Pete said, and then doing the research for the podcast. A lot of great stuff. So this is your day. So why don't you just walk us through, and where'd you grow up, and how did you see a path? When did that path start to get into law enforcement, public safety?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Flagstaff, Arizona, and my mother died when I was very young. I was raised by my grandparents, and when I turned 18, old Hispanic, parents or grandparents, when you turn 18, you're on your own. And so I had a scholarship to Northern Arizona University, and I was going to NAU, and I wanted to be a police officer. And I'll tell you why. What happened to me when I was a kid, I used to, when school was out, we'd run to the local newspaper. It was the Arizona Daily Sun, and we'd check out 20 newspapers, and they cost a dime at the time. And for every one you sold, you kept a nickel. So if you sold 20 papers, you got $1, which was not bad money, So my buddy and I picked up our 20 papers to go sell downtown Flagstaff, which isn't very big. And some guy was in our area, our corner, in our watering hole. So we had a little scuffle back and forth, and this Flagstaff police officer saw what was going on. He grabbed all 3 of us, and we were about a block from the police department, the Flagstaff Police Department. He threw us in a jail cell. Can you believe that? And we're crying. We're going to prison for the rest of our lives, And after about 10 minutes, he came and got us and says, "Hey, get out. If you guys ever get in trouble again, there's hell to pay." And that had a big impact on me. I've always remembered that guy. And then I was going to school, and I needed money, and I was working odd jobs like we all did when we were 18, 19. And do you guys ever have somebody that really made a difference in your life, that really helped you out in your career?
Yeah.
I had one, and this guy name is Joe Richards. He was the sheriff of Coconino County. He was this handsome guy, physically fit. He's an artist, writer, like a Renaissance man. He saw something in me and hired me as a 19-year-old deputy sheriff, and went to a regional academy, and then was put on patrol. I had no business being on patrol, looking back on it, especially 19 years old. I would go to bar fights, and I couldn't even buy a beer in that bar, and also, obviously carried a gun and bullets. I wasn't old enough to buy a gun or bullets, And then I did that for about 2 years, and haven't been raised in Flagstaff, which at that time had maybe 40, 50,000 people. It's a beautiful area. Pete, you've been up in Northern Arizona and Flagstaff.
Yeah, I mean, it's 7,000 feet.
7,000 feet.
Systems up there.
Yeah, it's beautiful areas. There's a ski resort up there. And one thing about Flagstaff, and I've won a lot of drinks in bars around the country with this, is Flagstaff is one of the top 5 cities in the country for snowfall. You can believe that, in Arizona. Yeah. And so anyways, I knew this state trooper, highway patrolman at the time, they called him. Good looking guy. I love the uniform. I love that Smokey the Bear hat, big, beautiful cars. And so I thought, I want to be a trooper. So went through the process for there's some pictures there, my graduation day. The guy on the right, who's like 6'8", he was my classmate who was killed in the line of duty. And I always remember his name was Bill Murray, Murie, just a great, great man. So at the time when you joined the Highway Patrol at the time, Department of Public Safety, when you were hired, you signed a piece of paper saying you'll go anywhere in the state that we want to send you. And there are some hellholes, I tell you, up in the reservation, living in a trailer, you know, in the middle of nowhere. And I was single at the time, and usually they try to keep the single guys out in the middle of nowhere because they figured you'd get in trouble, you know. So they would send the single guys to either Phoenix, Tucson, or Flagstaff, which is great because I needed to finish school. So upon graduation, I was assigned to Tucson, which was great with me. So at that point, I was 21, single, starting off, worked the graveyard shift. They volunteered to work the graveyard shift for 2 years while I went to school at the University of Arizona. It worked out great. Met my wife at the time. I saw this gal. I was hanging out before a class by the law school. I saw this gal come in, beautiful woman. And I said, I'm going to ask her out. It's either going to work out or it's not. But so it worked out. And then did that for 2 years as a patrolman working graveyards, finished school at the U of A. And then I was approached, big push for narcotics agents at the time. Back in the late 78, 79, big push for narcotics agents. Weed was coming across the border, all kinds of stuff. Cartels were getting strong. And I was 23, looked 17, 18, could speak some Spanish. And they asked me, hey, do you want to go work undercover? And, you know, about 2 days before, I investigated a fatal accident with 3 people were killed. One was a baby. And I thought, I don't want to go to any more of those fatal, terrible accidents. And I've been to a lot of them. And so I thought, sounds good to me. So joined the narcotics division in the undercover squad and kind of did that for a while. I got promoted as a sergeant in the narcotics squad. And then my wife at a law school that's a picture of I'm on the left, my partner Steve Wraithley. We just bought 300 pounds of marijuana from a cartel guy down in Tucson, which is an interesting story in itself, arresting this guy. He tried to kill me about a month later when he got out on bond. My wife came home one day. She goes, hey, this big law firm in Phoenix wants to hire me. Can you transfer? So at that point, I transferred to Phoenix in a job. You know, inspections and control. There's inspection jobs that all agencies have to see how agencies are performing and all that stuff. That was the last thing I wanted, but it was the only sergeant position open at the time. So I took that job, but it was the best thing that happened to me. I got to learn policies and procedures, deal with the higher command, deal with the governor's office, deal with other different agencies. So it was a big growing experience for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
For street guys, it's always good to get those jobs, even though you might not want them, because you learn, you know, if you're going to move up in the ranks, you need to learn the policies and how the policies even come about. So, yeah, sometimes it's good to get out of your comfort zone.
And it was out of the comfort zone for me because I was a street cop, you know. Especially working 3.5 years undercover as a agent and 3 as a sergeant, and everything was just go, kicking doors in, working with informants. These were the days, Pete, where we would do telephonic search warrants from payphones. Remember those days?
Yeah.
And you would have an ashtray full of dimes and quarters to make calls.
That's
you know,
hilarious.
Remember those days? And it was a wonderful experience. And then from that position, I was promoted to lieutenant and then captain and commander, and the street experience was always so valuable when you're making decisions as a commander, because sometimes in law enforcement you'll see people that go through the ranks that have not spent much time on the street, and they stand out. They're good at test taking, and I was fine with test taking, but I also was proud that I did my time on the streets, and 24-hour surveillances and kicking doors in. Those are the old days where you do a search warrant. You say, hey, you guys take the front, you take the back. If anybody's coming out the back door, it's not us. Remember, it's the bad guy, But it was a very good experience. And then when George W. Bush, I was a commander, and when George W. Bush was elected, I was aware of the marshal's position. And, there are 94 federal districts in the country, and the president appoints a US Marshal and a US attorney to those 94 districts. And I thought, I'm gonna apply for that marshal position and it's a political position. And I knew John McCain very well, actually lived like a block from me. And John Kyle was the other senator. They were both Republicans. So, I sent the letters, met with them, called them, and a lot of people, like 30 people put in for it. And I admire John McCain. And, listen, I don't think it's any secret. I'm a Republican, and the Republicans aren't high on John McCain, but I'll always be high on John McCain for what he did. And people that help you and take care of you, and he did for me. Even when I was Marshal, he would call me up and say, Dave, on a Sunday, his gravelly voice, Dave, what are you doing? Nothing, Senator. Hey, come down. We'll have a sandwich and a beer.
Nice.
He just wanted to talk about law enforcement. What do you guys need? What's going on? What are the trends? What are you seeing in Mexico? Because we did so many things in Mexico. And what can I do to help out? He was John McCain was a very, very pro-police guy. And so was the other senator, John Kyle, at the time.
Yeah. I remember he was still there when I first got to. Let me ask you, when did you start the Marshal's gig? Like, what year was it? 'Cause I got there in 2007. How long were you the Marshal when I arrived?
Well, I got nominated in 2001, and then 9/11 happened. You go through this terrible, awful process, the background, and I had to tell them about. They said, "Ever been arrested before?" I said, "Well, I kind of got arrested in Vienna," and they're looking. The FBI agents look at me. What do you mean? I said, "Well, I got on the subway. Me and my father-in-law went on a trip. I met him in London, and we took the Channel, went to France, and went to Vienna, and we were going to some museum one morning, and we get on the train subway in Vienna. As soon as we get in, these cops come in, and all the locals pull out all these things out of their pocket. I said, Harold, what's going on? He goes, I don't know. I've read this thing. I've written this a million times. So the police take us out and says, you don't have a ticket. You can either come with us or pay the fine. What are you going to do? I think it was like 20 euro or something, So that was my my one arrest in my life that I went through. But anyways, to answer your question, once I was going through the process very quickly, and you have to be confirmed by the Senate. Mm-hmm. And when 9/11 happened, everything came to a halt, as you can imagine. Sure. And then the first of the year, in 2002, things cranked back up again, and I got confirmed by the Senate, and the president signed off. The couple of days later. So, early 2000, March of 2002, Pete, was when I was actually officially appointed.
Wow. Yeah, I was curious.
How
I heard those background checks. They go back like 25 years for the appointees. Is that correct?
Yeah, they went back to when I was in high school. They went to talk to my high school teachers, my university professors. And they asked him, it was really funny. They asked one of my neighbors, hey, the FBI came to talk to me about you. And I didn't tell, I lied for you, David. He was joking, And he said, one of them asked me a weird question. He goes, when David or Nancy are emptying the trash, do you hear a lot of bottles clanging? Meaning,
Yep.
liquor.
Are you drinking a lot?
And which I thought was very interesting. And then another interesting at that time. Do you remember what's the name of that? What's the name of that place that you read videos all the time? Back then, Blockbuster.
Yeah.
They went to Blockbuster that was in my neighborhood and checked out to see what videos I checked out.
That's hilarious.
Luckily, I didn't go to the one behind the curtain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't realize they were so intrusive with those.
Yeah, back then it was. Did
they even turn over the information? Like if you walk into Hollywood or Blockbuster and somebody walks in and says, "I'm doing a background check on. I want to know what videos." Are they even cooperating?
They did. They said, "Oh, here we go." You know, they had the records, and you know, I thought it was interesting that they would check to see if my trash clanged when we emptied it. You know.
I'm glad they don't ask my neighbors that question.
Oh,
yeah. Well, my video store was like a local one, and they used to have saloon doors instead of a curtain. And it was always the same guy in there with a baby Bjorn with his baby in on the other side of the saloon doors.
Yeah.
So, you never know.
So David, retiring from DPS, which is a state organization, as we know,
right,
and then transitioning to the feds. How big of an adjustment was that for you? I know you were at an executive level, so it's not perhaps as shocking as going from like a patrol guy to being a deputy US Marshal. But I mean, what was the transition like for you, being an executive going from the state to the feds?
When I left DPS, I was second in command of the criminal investigation division. It had about 500 detectives. But going to the feds was, and I knew it was, Pete, tell me, I knew it was going to be, you know, because state and local, like when I was with DPS as a commander, if you wanted to do something, you could do things real quickly. You know, pay informants, do this, buy this, buy that. You can move on the go very quickly. With the feds, it was very dangerous. It was very slow. You had to check with some suit at headquarters, and I get it. You know, Pete, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and dealing with informants, which you have to be very, very careful of, because, as you know, the informants are your lifeblood in law enforcement. And then here was the other big issue, Pete and Tommy. You have an outside guy coming into an organization. And it's been that way since 1789, when the Marshal Service was formed with the first judicial act of Congress. George Washington appointed the first 13 U.S. Marshals, and the president still does that today. So you're going into an organization, very proud organization, very historic, and I know they're thinking, who is this guy coming in? And I've been around Arizona my whole life, and I know they did background on me, you know, where I've been, what I've done. So I think I was okay there. But you know, sometimes there's maybe a little resentment, or how we have this outsider coming in, and I was very focused and aware of that, and I wanted them to let them know that, hey, I'm not coming in here to warm up a seat in the corner and not do anything. I want to do what's best for the District of Arizona and the U.S. Marshal Service, and together we can do this. So that's what makes being the presidentially appointed U.S. Marshal in a federal district a little difficult. Sometimes in-house marshal people become presidentially appointed, but you know, the thing is, it is a political position. And some people like it and some people don't, but it's been that way for 1789, and that's never going to change.
Yeah.
You know,
I know we were talking about a little bit before we went on camera. You know, for you being a cop and then transitioning to a federal job, you know, what I found doing the same thing is some of the folks that come from federal service that never worked the street.
Yeah.
Not all, because I mean, Joe Slatala, for example, who worked for me in Phoenix, was a great agent. He came right out of University of Michigan. But I mean, a lot of them, they get paralyzed with fear. You know, they're so used to the bureaucracy and the stacks of paper to make a decision that you get a lot of that analysis paralysis when it comes to doing things in the field. Where a guy like you or myself or Tommy, we were cops. When you show up at a scene as a cop, you have to make a decision.
You have to make a decision.
There's no let's round table it. We'll have a meeting. We'll set up a meeting so we can prepare for the next meeting, which I saw a lot in federal government. So did that frustrate you a little bit, seeing that climate coming from the state and then going into the Marshal Service as an executive, to see that difference in culture where it's much more paperwork driven as opposed to following your instincts and going out there and, you know, just making decisions?
Yeah. And, you know, kind of like ATF or FBI, DEA, the troops that come in from all walks of life. Mm-hmm. And you could tell in this case, deputy marshals who had been street cops that came over, They knew how to deal with the public. They knew what it was like to sit in your car for 24 hours, and how to interview informants, how to talk to them, and all that stuff that makes cops really good on the street. You have all this intelligence stuff these days and all these things, but it comes down to it, it's just dealing with people on a regular basis. Because I remember when we were cops, you had contacts at hotels and bars and restaurants. You could go into a hotel and say, hey, help us out on this, this, and this. And I think sometimes, and not all, but with a lot of federal agents, they weren't used to that. And plus, also working with the community. When I was with the sheriff's department and with DPS, especially in the gang unit, you had to work very closely with the community. I remember when I was head of the state gang task force here in Arizona. One Monday morning, I come in and there's a couple, and they were a black couple, and they wanted to meet with me, and they said, "Hey, you were Friday night. Your gang officers harassed my son." I said, "Well, let's talk. What they do?" Well, they made him raise up his shirt to show their tattoos. Asked him what they was doing, and I said, "Well, does he have tattoos?" "Well, he does. Do you know what they mean?" I had no clue. "Does he have gang writing, in his room on his notebooks?" "Well, yeah, but we don't know what they mean." And this was a couple that, and I understand they were taking care of their son, but they were also didn't understand what their son was doing on the street, and they said, "Well, we need more." The couple saying we need more DPS officers or gang officers that know the street and can understand what's going on. I said, "Well, you're obviously well known in that community that he was from. Why don't you send us your young men and women to be police officers?" And he says, "I never thought about that, but that would be a good idea." And you need people from all walks of life in law enforcement, and that's and that had a big impact on me. I remember when I was a gang commander, I went up to the Navajo reservation. And Pete, as you know, the Navajo Nation is the biggest and most populated tribe in the United States. And I was riding with a Navajo captain who oversaw criminal investigations. And he says, "David," he says, the Navajo language is very descriptive, very, very descriptive. If a man is walking into town, there's 5 ways to say it. He's happy, he's sad, it's snowing, it's windy. It's all part of when you say something like that. He says the Navajo word for police officer, it's translated, means men without legs. Okay, think about that. Men without legs. And I said, "Well, why men without legs?" He goes, "Because whenever the Navajo people see police officers, all they see them in a car, and they only see this much of them. So, they don't have any legs." Okay. And I thought it was a great story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I thought it was perfect what he was telling me. And I never forgot what he told me. And then, he was saying that we need to get out. And they need to see that we have very long and fast legs also, But it was a great story he told me that I never forgot. So
that's interesting. Look, I started, as you know, David, as a housing cop. We walk beats, which walking amongst the people you police, you build a degree of trust. So that's very telling to me. That's pretty interesting. I don't think a lot of folks realize how big Arizona is. I remember when I testified in front of Congress, I had to talk about like the did we have enough staff? Did you have enough people? And I called a buddy that worked in the 46th precinct, which is exactly 1 square mile. So I said, how do I compare a precinct to the state of Arizona? The state of Arizona is 114,006 square miles.
Yeah.
So you were the marshal for 114,006 square miles. But so the other thing that's a little bit unique, I know not every marshal gets to do this. You served through many presidents.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Like, what were the differences, and like, what were the cases that really got you the most excited, or that might have perhaps touched you in even a way where you've just got, you're not the same because of it?
When I was first appointed by Bush, the second, if you will, I thought I'm going to be there 4 years. If he wins election, I'll be there 8 years. Great. Either way, I was so proud just to be appointed by the president.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 4 years, I'll take it. So he won the second term, and then Obama came in next, and I thought, well, I'm out of here, and I had no problem with that. That's the way the process works.
Right.
New administration comes in, you're gone, and then as the marshal, I didn't play politics. They knew I was a Republican, and they would tease me. I would have my Hispanic friends. They would say, "David, the hottest corners of hell are reserved for people like you." He was joking. He says, "I said what?" He says, "Hispanic Republicans." But I got along with both sides. I didn't play politics, and so Obama reappointed me. And so I did 8 years with President Obama. Then Trump came in his first term and reappointed me. And then Biden came in, and I also stayed with Biden. But at that time, I'd been around so long. I thought this I had a great career, and it's time to move on, because I always felt it's better to. I was hoping I was leaving on top and not where people are wishing, "Hey, let's get this guy out of here. We need some new blood, And we've probably all seen it in law enforcement.
Sure.
Where people hang around way, 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 way too long. And it's
So
time,
David,
to move.
I have a question, because I have again, being a local cop, New York City Transit Police, and then the NYPD after the, as Pete and I refer to it as the hostile takeover, but it's more well known as the merger in 1994.
The hostile
takeover. A lot of people, and especially a lot of our listeners, because this show is very New York centric and Northeastern based, and a lot of local law enforcement and local families of local law enforcement, not a lot of federal. And that's part of what Pete and I are trying to do, is bring that audience to the rest of the nation and the federal space as well. So having been an Arizona Department of Public Safety and a trooper, and going through DPS and then becoming a marshal, what is the job of the marshal in one of those districts that you spoke of earlier? And in this case, you got the whole state of Arizona, but I have other friends in other states. I won't name drop them now because I don't know if they're good, but some very, very wonderful people are marshals in other states. But tell us what, going from a state police agency to the marshals, and then what is the responsibility of the U.S. Marshal in one of those districts?
No, and that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to talk about that. The Marshal Service are like the Swiss Army knife, I think, of federal law enforcement. Primary duties is to hunt down fugitives worldwide. We do the witness protection program. Everybody thinks the Bureau does the witness protection program,
right,
but it's the marshals.
They'll take credit for it, though, David. The Bureau they would take credit for it at the point.
Exactly. And it's a fascinating program, absolutely fascinating. I'll tell you a quick story about the witness protection program. I was giving a speech somewhere to a bunch of lawyers, and I was talking about the witness protection program, just generally, because you can't talk much about it. After my presentation, this young lawyer woman comes up, and she goes, "Hey, can I talk to you on the side?" She goes, "Hey, when I was a young girl, the U.S. Marshals came to my house. I think she lived in Cincinnati. And they said, my mother, my father, it was me and a brother. This is pack up, one suitcase each. You're coming with us." Her father was involved, obviously, in something, and was going to testify for the government against some organized crime people. She said they put us in a safe house for months, and changed our names. The name I have now is the name the marshals gave me, and I got to be really close with one of the marshals that oversaw our family. And the marshal told me, he goes, you're a pretty bright gal. You ought to think about becoming a lawyer. And I think she said she was 12 or something, and it stuck in her mind. And she went to law school. And she goes, I owe it all to the marshal. She was tears coming down her eyes. She's telling me this story. She goes, I owe everything to the US Marshals and for what they did for me and my family, and even like I said, even the name I have, and she says, I remember sitting down with the deputy marshal, and he said, what name would you like to be? Your first name, and then we'll go with the other ones. And she goes, I kind of like this name. She goes, and they kind of worked the name out, and they agreed that her first name would be, they worked together on, and especially their middle name and her last name and all this stuff that you have to do on, the backstop of putting people in the witness protection program.
Yep.
But it's a fascinating program. And if these people that go into the program, if they follow the marshal's guidelines, it's been 100% successful.
Wow.
It's when they don't follow the guidelines.
Yeah, sure.
They get in trouble. We had Sammy the Bull here.
I remember that. He was in Mesa.
And then he fell back into the crime and started dealing drugs with his kids.
Yeah, with his
great
son.
guy. What a great guy. Good guy.
Yeah,
and now he's doing a podcast that's more important. That's more popular than ours, Pete.
That's great. Maybe you guys hook up with Sammy.
Yeah, he was in Mesa when I was in Gilbert. I remember.
What's that? Yeah, he was in Mesa.
He started to show his head because that, up until then, nobody knew who he was. But that's when he started to mess up. That's when we were living. I guess I was a bit influenced, David.
Yeah, his son started getting involved in drugs, and he goes, "Hey, let me show you how to do this." So he got back in, and but there's a lot of people that go through that, and it's interesting because it's a very expensive program because you got to pay for their living, their everything, their vehicles, and get them a job. And the problem with a lot of the people that go in the witness protection program is they have no skills. They come to the witness protection program, and we're trying to find them a job somewhere to get them off the government dole, and they want to be CEO of some company. So it's very, very difficult, and some of them just come. Some we kick out that violate the rules. Others just come in and say, "Hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm getting out of the program. Well, do you understand what you're doing? I'm going to take my chances." So, the other things we do is we protect the federal judges and the courthouses. Which is big right now. Had a few, over the years, there's been a few federal judges. A funny story one time. One of the federal judges here in Phoenix, actually he lives like 2 blocks from me. Great guy. He calls me. It was Christmas time. He goes, "David," he goes, someone knocked over my Christmas decorations and knocked over my mailbox. And I'm thinking, it was at nighttime, midnight. You have some kids running around. You know what it is. But I got to go to his house at midnight. Judge, let me check with Phoenix PD. I checked with Phoenix PD. I guess some high school kids were going in the neighborhood and just doing stupid stuff.
Yep.
He goes, "Oh, okay." So after he went to bed, I went back later and I put crime scene tape all over his house. And he wakes up in the morning. He calls me, "David, you SOB." Crime. He was laughing, but he left it he left it there for a week. He thought it was pretty. I said, "Judge, it's a crime scene," But and when he gives talks and lectures, he talks about how I put crime scene tape all over his house, and the neighbors loved it, and he got a big kick out of it. Another time, and these federal judges, they make some rulings that are very difficult, and pisses a lot of people off.
Sure.
You remember the 1070 case here in Arizona, where Senate Bill 1070, where if you thought you were an illegal immigrant in the country, you could be stopped, and all this. It was very, very controversial.
Right.
And a federal judge, shut it down, and she got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of death threats, and so you have to investigate those, and they were from all over the country.
Sure.
So I had to put a 24/7 security around her and her house, protect her and her husband, and until we cleared all those threats. and most of them are, you know what they are. There's some guy in his mom's basement,
Yeah.
Just sending off stuff. But we were looking for people that obviously had the means to do that, and it cleared it up. But you get to know them very well. Her husband, who was a doctor, he put out the barbecue and cook steaks and burgers for the deputies at night and do all this kind of stuff. So you get to know him very well. And then protecting the courthouses. A lot of people will call in threats on the courthouses, and that's where those court security officers are so important. They're the first defense. They're not deputy marshals, but they're former cops. And, several have been killed, and they're great because, and we want former cops because they can see things. They understand. They have a sixth sense.
Yes.
That something's going on, and they know how to talk to people, and another major job is we're responsible for all the federal prisoners that have not been sentenced. We have to take care of them and house them. And in Arizona, when I was there, today there's probably about 4,000, maybe a little less, 3,800 in custody. At one point, when I was a marshal, we had like 8,000 in custody. And they were in a private prison 70 miles from Tucson. And it's Court Civic, the private prison, which I do some consulting work for them, actually. And they do a great job with healthcare and food and making it easy for the attorneys and their family to visit. The problem is there's no other place to put federal prisoners, like in this case in Arizona. No other place. There's only 15 counties in Arizona. And the sheriffs don't have enough space, bed space to house, obviously, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. Plus, you want counties close to the courthouses in Phoenix and Tucson, so the lawyers can meet and the family can meet. So it really reduces the number of beds available with the sheriff's department. So most cops, when they arrest somebody and they book them, they clap their hands. I'm done. And I was the same way. I never thought about what happens with these people once they go in the jail. These corrections people, I tell you, they have the toughest job in public safety.
Yeah,
they do.
Tough job. They had to pay those guys $250,000 a year to put up with that stuff that they have to.
Yeah. So David, if I can interrupt for a second, because you brought up a couple of things. Protecting the judges, I definitely want to talk about that a second. And the federal courthouses, I definitely want to talk to you about that, because with the Summer of Love in 2020 and the burning down of federal courthouses and how that happened. And but going back to the federal, at its highest level, the Supreme Court of the United States and the threats that were against Kavanaugh and Barrett and a whole bunch of others. I mean, I think I could speak pretty well for the community, definitely our listeners. Like, we're a little frustrated that some arrests hadn't been made on that.
Yeah.
And then Kavanaugh, that guy came close. He showed up with a gun, and that's some pretty serious stuff. And I'm going to speak for myself, but I think a lot of people feel the same way. I don't think we were aggressive enough over the last 4 or 5 years of some of these really bad threats. And that goes on both sides. You and I talked before. You're a Republican. I'm probably not a Republican now, but I would lean more towards the ideas of what they do. I like saying I'm a social liberal, fiscal conservative, but I'm right of Genghis Khan on criminals, right?
Sure.
I'm with you on criminals. If you're a predator, you got to go. And if you're invading people's privacy and their right to live peaceably, you got to go. And you got to go away for a long time. And I'm pretty hard on that. So anyway, I don't really care about drawing a line in the political stand, but we can't have a SCOTUS being threatened the way they were. And basically the response, I think we were all pretty disappointed in.
I think that came from the top, though. That wasn't you can't arrest people if they're not going to be prosecuted. And I probably
exactly. During that Summer of Love, the marshals were sent up to Portland, the federal courthouse up there. It was getting inundated every night by hundreds of protesters trying to burn it down. It was a mess. And myself, my chief deputy, I sent about 10. Everyone from around the country has to send. Every district have to send people up, and I sent about 8, 10 up there. And I thought, well, let's go up and see what they're going through, because if this ever happens in Phoenix or Tucson or Flagstaff or Yuma, with the courthouse here, I want to. What's the best thing to do? What can we learn to make it better? So I spent a couple of nights in that Portland federal courthouse, where hundreds and hundreds of protesters were trying to burn it down. They were throwing fire bombs, and then we'd go out to try, and we'd have it all on video. We'd go out and arrest a couple, 3, 4, bring them in, charge them. The next morning, they're out, back out again, protesting. And it was madness.
Yeah.
And I was very frustrated. That was there at the Portland courthouse during the day. You could go out in the daytime, and everything was fine. But as soon as it started getting dark, everybody started congregating. And that picture was taken right at the federal courthouse in downtown Portland. And also there was a local guy in Portland. There was hundreds of people down there. Right across from the courthouse is a park, and hundreds of people down there protesting, causing all kinds of problems. This guy set up a little thing. He was selling ribs out there for people that were hungry, and it was popular. And the cops were buying the ribs, very popular. But then the protesters came in and forbid him from selling. They wanted a cut of his ribs. And he called them riot ribs, which I thought was pretty funny. But they shook this guy down, who was trying to make some money, and they wanted like 20% cut from his company of selling ribs to the locals there, who were down at the park. I was very, very frustrated that a lot of politicians, when this was going on, didn't call for this to stop.
Mm-hmm.
They were silent, absolutely silent. And I always felt that, law enforcement takes the brunt of crime issues all the time, all the time.
Yes, sir.
But we know that it's just not the cops. You got the judiciary.
Yeah.
You got the prosecutors.
I got a lot of stories about those people, right, David?
Oh yeah, I know. We have a lot of stories on that. Probation, corrections. It's one big wheel, should be working together.
Yes,
you got the cops getting their asses kicked all the time, arrest people, and the prosecutor's like, not charging. And then judges releasing people, no bond. It's crazy, And Pete, I know you've had your issues, and that's one that you asked about, the difference between state and federal. When you're a local or state cop, you go to the county attorney, they take your case.
Yes.
Unless there's major issues, they'll say, "Hey, go do some follow up, tighten up this, and this." Okay. On the federal side, the U.S. Attorney's Office will look at it and they'll say, "Well, take it down the street to the county attorney or the state attorney general." That shocked me when I first came in. Is like, you can turn down cases? I thought that was your job.
Cases.
Yeah. And the marshals, we'd arrest somebody, some fugitive, at 2 a.m. He would be obviously prohibited possessor, because fugitives, how they make money, they got to commit more crimes.
Right.
And we'd call the U.S. attorney on call, and I don't know, take it to the county.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay,
I'll tell you another little story, Tommy. I know what was the bane of David's existence for some time when we speak about courthouses. And I know this because whenever my people made arrests, I would go to the court. I would show my face in court. I wanted to be supportive. The architect who built the courthouse in Phoenix built this gigantic glass building in downtown Phoenix.
Yeah.
How tall was the building, David? About 7 floors?
It's 6 story. It's six floors.
Well, they put misters up top.
Yeah.
To help cool this atrium sort of lobby.
Yeah.
So David used to get so frustrated because what it turned into was almost like the rainforest, when you had the sun beating down on his glass building, and it turned into this gigantic cube of humidity.
That's hilarious.
And how this courthouse was built is just some business school ought to do a study on why this courthouse was select this type of, like I said, a block long glass building. It would have been perfect in San Diego. I think there's a similar building somewhere in northern New York, built by the same architect. But the story goes is that when they were deciding what kind of building, what kind of design, you think Southwest, you think of Southwest kind of motif, you could do all kinds of good things. They went to, what's the place that sold ribs and the gals are scantily clad?
Hooters, or is it?
Oh, Hooters. I've never been to that. That's why I was. I've heard about
never been to Hooters.
Never been there, but did you see Pete? He cranked back up, man. Look, they went. There was restaurants just down the block away, and there was a Hooters, and they had a misting system there. And I guess this architect says, "Hey, we'll use that to cool down the courthouse inside because it wasn't heated or cooled."
Right.
So that's a story on how the federal courthouse in Phoenix is called the Sandro Day O'Connor Courthouse, actually, who's another wonderful person. That's how which they don't use anymore, obviously. And the poor CSOs that work in that courthouse that do security, in the summertime, it's 110, 115. There it is. There it is. Yeah. It's hot as hell in there. And, the desert does get cold also. So you'll have them inside wearing gloves in the wintertime with gloves and mittens and, I remember people from visitors from out of state would come down, and the Cardinals played a couple blocks down the street. They have a big, beautiful stadium. People would come to the federal courthouse and say, "Is this the ballpark?" Because big. It's like, no, this is a federal courthouse. Because it was so open and glass. Again, go down the street a couple blocks.
The worst thing, Tommy, is if you were in this humid atrium, and even the hallways were outside. They were humid, so you're there waiting to testify, and you get into this horrendous sweat because it's like being in the rainforest, but in a suit because you're going to want to witness stand. Then the courtrooms, because judges are not going to be uncomfortable. They're like heat lockers. So you're sweating, you get on the stand, you're shivering because the air conditioning is so cold in the courtrooms and it's so humid outside. It was actually very interesting architectural catastrophe.
Okay, another kind of secret about that courthouse is supposedly, I don't know where this stuff comes from, but it was built on Indian burial grounds, okay? So the CSOs at night, some have claimed that they see, people, ghosts down in the basement. Who knows? But but it's one of those that you never know, I guess, right?
Well, that's really funny. So I have a good NYPD story, and I'm going to do a shout out to retired Chief John Colgan. Pete and I, a good friend of ours. John Colgan ran building maintenance at one point. Probably a bigger job than that. I don't know the exact job, but he was responsible for all the police facilities. So they built a new precinct in the 107 precinct in the middle of Queens, New York. And it was, if I get it right, it was kind of supposed to represent the whole structure, and its design was to replicate like a spaceship. And then the police desk where the sergeant or the lieutenant sits is kind of like the big, where Captain Kirk on the USS Enterprise would have sat. And up on top, they commissioned an artist, and he did like a fake antenna type of thing. The structure was 100% benign. Like, it meant nothing other than its artistic value. Once they put that thing up and it looked like an antenna, they received hundreds of calls and complaints saying that it was interfering with their TVs and their cable and their internet, everything. And the thing was completely inert. The thing was just obstruction. But people just want to complain. You know what I mean?
So, David, we're talking about a lengthy career, and we talked about the courthouse. You were the marshal there for a long time. I had the honor of working with your folks, and they were just great people to work with in the street. Eric, Matt, the whole crew.
Yeah.
I know of a couple of the cases that they used to talk about. So I know that you folks worked on some really interesting stuff. And I wasn't involved. They hunted them down. It just happened to be an ATF case. I shied being one of them.
Oh.
But I mean, what cases come to mind when you think of your time? Like, what cases really make you proud of the folks that you supervised there, like that they were able to accomplish?
You know, Pete and Tommy, the case that pops up in my head immediately is Paul Eichheit. And that was an ATF case. He was a Hell's Angel, and he was a Hell's Angel at night and a stockbroker in the daytime. He'd wear a suit, look very presentable, handsome guy. And at night, when he took off his dress shirts and his tie, tatted out Hell's Angels. And then one night, this was like in 2001, Hell's Angels were having a get together at their Mesa Clubhouse, which is East Phoenix area, and I think they wanted some women there, and they picked up this gal. Her last name was Garcia, and they said, "Hey, you want to come to a party?" And I think she was having a rough time in her life. She went to the Hell's Angels party, and she had like 4 kids. I think she's having a rough time in her life. So she went to the Hell's Angels party, which is a big mistake, obviously. Apparently, she said something at this party that pissed off the Hell's Angels. So they beat her unmercifully in the clubhouse, slit her throat. I shied at another Hell's Angel, took her out in the desert in way east, Maricopa County, east of Phoenix, and left her out in the desert to die, which she did die. Brutally just tortured this poor woman. I think it was one of your wiretap cases 2 years later. It was unsolved because you find this person way out in the middle of nowhere with their head severed, and 2 years later in a wiretap case, it comes up that Paul Eichheit and another individual was the ones that killed her, and he was arrested, and he stayed in jail for a little bit, went to post bond. A federal judge, a brand new judge, released him on bond, but gave him put an ankle monitor on him. And we thought, when that happened, we thought, he's not going to be here long. Sure enough, Paul Eichheit got a friend of his. They looked very similar, except their eye colors were different. Eichheit's eyes were blue. His friends were hazel. But on the passport application, he put that he had blue eyes. So his friend got a new passport for him. And if you looked at it, you could see where an immigration officer could say, "We understand." They look very close. So Eichheit takes off. He's on the run, and we make him one of our top 15 fugitives, the US Marshals top 15 fugitives, and we track them all over the US, Canada, Great Britain, and then he goes cold. His scent goes cold. But you know what you need when you're hunting.
There he goes.
There he is. Yep. On the right is when he was arrested, and on the left when he was charged. On the left was when we picked him up in Buenos Aires, Argentina. When you're looking for somebody, and the Marshals, I tell you, they're the best at hunting down people, the absolute best. There are 2 main things you need when you're looking for somebody, or just to survive. Let me put it that way. You need 2 things to survive. All of us do. You need to communicate with people, and you need money in some form or another. Okay? Those are the 2.
Can I raise one more thing?
You bet.
David, we used to have a thing in Brooklyn. We would look for our fugitives. Where are they getting paid? Money?
Yep.
Where are they getting laid? Sorry.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and another
one.
Figure
out those 2 things, you probably find your perp.
Yeah, and the other one is, where does Mama live?
Right.
And we get more fugitives on Christmas, Thanksgiving, because they want to go see Mama.
Back in the day, we used to do mail covers for those holidays, Mother's Day, Christmas, do mail covers, and we would go to the postal inspectors and say we want to interrupt mail like from a month before to see if there's any letters coming from anywhere. This was before the internet. I'm sorry, we're aging ourselves here, guys. But I mean, we do have a guy with 50 years experience on here. So, but yeah, we used to do mail covers for those holidays that you're talking about.
Absolutely. The other thing is, and you have to do, you would do electronic surveillance on family, financial surveillance on family, and we didn't know where he was. And then on part of the financial surveillance on family members, we pick up where one of the family members was sending money to Buenos Aires, Argentina. One time, okay. Same time next month, another money transfer to Buenos Aires. And we thought, Paul Eichheid's in Buenos Aires, and then we looked back on the transfers, and you could see that on specific days he was getting money, and he was being supported by family members. So surveillance was done at this Casa de Cambio in Buenos Aires, and set up for a couple days, nothing. Like the third day at this Casa de Cambio, lo and behold, there's Paul Eichheid going into the Casa de Cambio to pick up his money. Boom, he was arrested. Okay, so we're all happy, but that's just the start of it. You know what comes next? All the wrangling with the countries. We have treaties with all of them. It took 7 years to get him back to Phoenix. Oh, 7 years. And he's fighting like hell, Oh, this and that, and they're going to kill me. So, and one of the first things you bring somebody in from other countries, you have to drop the death penalty. Everybody knows that, And finally, he his options, ran out. There he is. That's when he was picked up, and almost 18 years later, after Mrs. Garcia was brutally murdered, we finally get him back to Phoenix, and to serve his time. And obviously, he couldn't get the death penalty because of the agreements with Argentina. But he got a very long prison. The guy that gave him that made the passport for him got 9 months in prison. Which pardon?
For harboring, for aiding and abetting?
For getting for making the passport for him.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I thought, well, at least something happened to this guy.
If I remember correctly, David, you called me to tell me he was apprehended. I think it was a Super Bowl Sunday.
Was it a Super Bowl Sunday?
I believe so.
It could have been. I have my notes here somewhere on Eichheid, but it might have been. 18 years later, he finally gets back, and I remember talking to the federal judge who did this, and he was brand new. He's a wonderful man. He goes, David, I blew that, and judges usually don't admit they made a mistake. He goes, I thought the ankle monitor would do it, but with these guys, they're not gonna. And it happens all the time, and and the majority of in Arizona, and other states around the country, we have thousands of fugitives wanted in America to go to Mexico, and in Arizona and other districts of the Marshal Service, we have deputies that work full time, working for fugitives in Mexico, along with our deputy marshals who are assigned in Mexico City. And there are just so many fugitives down there, and to be very blunt and open, it's just tough sometimes to get the Mexican police to work these cases for us. We could tell them sometimes we know where they are. They're in this hamlet. They're in this they're in this ranch. This and that, and you have to be very, very careful. When you're dealing with other officials in other countries, because they you don't know where they're coming from, and Mexico. I'm not saying anything that nobody doesn't know is dealing with Mexican officials. Sometimes they work for the cartels because they have to, not that they want to, but they're threatened. Yeah. If you're assigned a high-ranking official in the Mexican police. Pete, you've heard this. You've heard this term, plata y plomo.
Yep. Silver or lead.
Silver or lead.
Yeah.
You do either want silver money or do you want lead, a bullet to the head.
I never heard that.
You never heard plata y plomo? Famous. It's just well known.
I first heard it in Arizona. But Tommy, the thing that a lot of Americans don't realize is Mexican cops aren't like U.S. cops where they sign out and go home armed. They turn their pistol over to the next shift. And he's trying to tell people all know where they live. So, I mean, look, the Mexican cops who are straight shooters have such deep respect for them because they don't know if they're going to get shot from the cartel guy in front of them or the dirty guy behind them. You know,
exactly. I remember the comandante for the state of Sonora, which is just south of Arizona. Great guy, worked with us very closely. I had him and his staff come up. I gave him awards, certificates and stuff, which went a long way. They get back to Nogales to spend the night before they went back to Hermosillo. The cartels tried to kill him that night, and he says, David, don't give me any more awards, okay? It's like, God, you got it, buddy. But hunting down fugitives in Mexico were thousands, and we would hear from victims, this guy killed my husband, my brother, and why aren't you doing anything about it? Go get him. And we want to, but we have to work with the local countries in doing that, and you have to have some give and take and kind of work with them, and there are just so many. But we also know that, and it's frustrating to the victims of some of these people who were killed, is that they always come back. They always come back in the country. They'll step in, and back into the U.S. and we can pick them up there. But it can be very frustrating. Back when I was with DPS, they did some fugitive stuff there. We're looking for a guy, I think he was wanted for murder, and we went to the comandante, and we didn't show him the file. We showed him a picture, and he kind of looked at it. He knew what we were doing, and we could trust this guy. And we're talking about all the stuff you do, cops talk about, with the file on his desk with a picture and a name. We saw him look at it, and he knew what we were getting at. So we finish the meeting, we leave. We get a call a couple days later. There's a McDonald's right on the Mexican border of Arizona and Sonora, Mexico. And they said, be at the McDonald's at 10 o'clock tonight. Go down to McDonald's at 10 o'clock tonight. This guy is handcuffed to the fence at McDonald's. It's like, and how do you write that up for the prosecutors?
Before it got tight, we had a gentleman, and I use the term loosely, get on a plane in Trinidad and come to the States. And he was just shoved on a plane, and we were told to meet him in Miami. But this is pre 9/11. So yeah, they just put him on a plane, and they would just say, you might want to meet this plane in Miami. Those are the good old days. The good old days.
Yeah, we were talking about the duties of the Marshal Service. We kind of got up, with the judges and the courts. And I want to tell another judge story where a judge gets a text one day, and it says, you made a big mistake. You're going to regret it. Terms to that sense, like you're in trouble. You'll be sorry you did what you did. You're in trouble. And the judge obviously freaks out, because, how do you get my number, this and that? It was obviously took it as a death threat. And we did too at first. So it wasn't a very, smart criminal, because we had the number it came from. So we tracked the cell phone number down, and we go to this house, very nice neighborhood. Two big old deputy marshals go there and says, hey, do you have this phone number on one of your cells? Nice man and wife said, Tommy, come here. Bring their kid in. Tommy, did you send this? What happened is this kid, he's like 15, 16 years old. His girlfriend broke up with him. So he sent her this text, like, you'll be sorry, for what you did. You'll regret it. He was just like lovesick. And he punched in the wrong number by mistake and sent it to a federal judge, But and it's interesting, all the different things that you get involved in. And also one of the other big jobs of the Marshal Service is they do. There really is a Con Air, We've all seen, that we've seen the movie Con Air.
Nicolas
There really
Cage.
is.
I'm not a huge Nicolas Cage fan, but
They use Nicolas Cage. Yeah, there
okay.
really is a Con Air. It's called JPATS, Justice Prisoner something Transport System, whatever. But it's basically Con Air, and basically we have our own airline system and transporting prisoners back and forth all over the country to go to court or send them to prison. And they have these hubs all over the country, and they're just moving these prisoners back and forth, and some really bad guys, So
I didn't know that.
Hey, if we could just acknowledge some comments on here. We don't get, so it's really interesting, and we're learning as we go. This is episode 9 for Pete and I. We don't get as much comments as the other shows. Ron Layson here, who runs the executive perspective with Rob Lukash, 2 former NYPD executives, kind of analyze policing from that perspective, which is wonderful. There's a lot of interaction, a lot of stuff. And certainly John and Eric on the Finest Unfiltered with Marlon get a lot of comments. And then Sal Greco on his show, they get tons of comments, very politically driven around all the things going on in the NYPD and New York City politics and all that kind of stuff. Our show is focused on conversations like we're having with you, David. And I watch it, and it's fascinating to me. Like, we don't get anywhere near the chatter in the comments as much as those other shows. I think people are just listening and focused in on, they love hearing the stories, which is great. However, but I do want to bring attention to a few. So Ron Layson, another unprecedented guest at the tavern. So kudos to you, David. Eric Dim, another who's who at the 10-4 Tavern, VR Forever, Great Wings. Our friend Mike King from Utah, listening from 33,000 feet, fellas. He's on his way back from Australia. He did Mike King did a documentary on a serial killer in Australia, which is fascinating stuff. So you guys should follow Profiling Evil and watch that show. And yes, he's drinking a Diet Coke. He's also a teetotaler. We don't condemn him for that. We actually encourage responsible alcohol consumption. But sometimes we like to take a little bit of a taste. But those of you who overindulge, please, don't check yourself, look out for yourself. Don't get out of hand. Never drive drunk. Please take that Uber, take that call, make that phone call. You should have people in your orbit that will pick you up anytime, anywhere without any question. VR Forever, Profiling Evil, and DJ VR. Love the podcast, Tommy Pete. Keep up the great work. 1999, reaching out. And Terry Murnane, former detective in Brooklyn North Homicide. Excellent homicide detective. Giving thumbs up. Like, share, and subscribe, everybody, to Finest Unfiltered. That's where the engagement really happens. We really need those likes, shares, and subscribes. So please do that. Sorry for the interruption and a little plugs.
No, I love to see that.
But let's
get
back at it.
My son, we got out of college, went to work for BlackRock in Manhattan, but lives in Dumbo, which is a great little gentrified neighborhood out there. And Dos Equis?
We're going to the Del Maguey. I'm doing my one shot of tequila, and now I'm going to do one shot of mezcal.
Oh, there you go.
For the second hour.
Yeah, you got to give me contact somebody in Dumbo in case my son. He's a good kid, but keep an eye on.
We got
so that's the 84th precinct. 84th precinct. We had an organized crime hit down there once. I remember the 84 working on a lot. All the lofts were converted to these really cool restaurants.
Yes.
I mean, it is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It really, the cobblestone streets.
Yeah.
And even a shout out to Jacques Torres. He was a chocolatier who I bought my current wife, my wife, her first box of chocolates from Jacques Torres in Dumbo. So there you go.
Okay. I love Dumbo. What a great place. And they say the best views of Manhattan is in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful. Hey, the cops that you talk to around the country, we see this in Arizona, and I'm sure it's obviously around the country, is Phoenix PD is like 600-700 officers down. The state police, highway patrols, Deep Arizona Department of Police, they're down 500-600 officers. they get candidates, but they're having trouble hiring people. A lot of it is when I talk to the heads of the agencies, drug use is one of them, is number one, and number two is financial issues. Okay, I know that the Arizona Police Post, the standards and training for Arizona, they're lowering the I don't want to say standards, but the drug usage. I know when I came on as a brand new highway patrolman, you couldn't have used any drugs, none, zero. Later they changed it to, well, you couldn't have hard drugs, never. Right. Weed, you couldn't have smoked that in the last 2 years. Now they're changing it to you can't have used it in the last 6 months. And there's always different things here. And I can't say I don't have a problem. I mean, things change in society, and we have to evolve also with what's going on in the country. And I tell you, there you go, right? Exactly. I'm kind of like an old school cop. I don't have problems with tattoos. I personally, this is my personal view. I just think they should be covered up when you're working in uniform. Also, I saw a local cop here with a man bun. Yeah. I almost lost it. Lost it. But I know that's things have changed. And I talk to my kids who are in their, if you're in your early 30s, what are you? What generation are you? Anyway,
they're not X. I think they're Z. I think no. Or would they be millennials?
I think they're millennials. Yeah. And I say, hey, okay, help me out here. I'm not a big fan of tattoos in uniform. Not that they have them. I think should be covered. And beards, and hair. Goes, Dad, you're old fashioned. Times have changed. The young kids probably relate more with cops that they have tattoos, earrings, and then there's just the males and beards. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm just like old school.
I have some opinions, David. First of all, I can tell you, towards the end of my career at ATF, I was the head of training, but I also had special agent recruiting and hiring, and then industry ops recruiting and hiring. And similarly, when I came on with ATF was 2001. I came on with them right before 9/11. You could have smoked marijuana twice in your life and no hard drugs ever. Couldn't have any sort of criminal history. They were very unforgiving. By the time I left, and a lot of this came from lawsuits, by the way, but some of it was within DOJ. Some of it was just happening across government. Some of it was you could not have used marijuana more than 10 times any other controlled substance ever, with some exception, and I'll tell you what the exception was. And if you were arrested, you had to go before, and if it was a felony, you were done. But let's say you had a DWI in college. Yeah. They would send you before a fitness and suitability board, and they would have to look at it. And I actually chaired that board for a while. Like, all right, he was arrested one time in college for a bar fight, never been in trouble since then. All right, so we would kind of do a deep dive, and sometimes we'd pass some of these candidates, sometimes no. But the other policy was, if you took an Adderall, for example, which is a controlled substance, why did you take it? Well, I took it because I was nervous, and my friend had one, and I didn't have a prescription. So if they used it for the legitimate purpose, not to get high, they would get a pass. If it's like I wanted to experiment with it because then it would be a fail. That was just the policy. But no, I agree. Like, I even look at my old time with the NYPD and the housing police. My shoes were shined every single time I set foot on the street. My uniform was clean. It was pressed. I look at the cops in New York today, and look, I don't envy the job they have, because there's just a lot of pressure they're under with this community, lack of trust, with the politics, where you have DAs and you have politicians that will feed them into the wood chipper to get a vote. But they look like elevator mechanics with these cargo pants that they wear. They wear shirts with no badge on it, baseball hats sometimes. Yeah. I prefer the old trousers and wear your shield, wear your medals, wear a tie with a tie clip. So I agree with you. And look, some of it, I guess, is going with the times. Yeah. But I think, and I know you're going to agree, because I know the cloth that you cut from. Command presence matters. Like, I don't have a big problem with a beard. if it's very neatly trimmed. And I have a beard now, so I have no hair, so I had to compensate. But when I was in uniform, I never thought of having anything but beyond a mustache that went past the lips, because that was the uniform. My hair never touched my color. That was the uniform. Now you have folks, like you said, man buns. You have people wearing ponytails.
Yeah.
I'm against that.
Yeah. All right. So a couple of things on the uniform protocols back in the day, right? Couldn't touch the collar, couldn't touch the ears, by the sides of the mouth.
Yeah.
Right. All of those things. The man bun, I guess technically you could have always tucked it under your hat. The women did that all the time.
Sure.
With their buns, right? However, like, as talking about the uniform, and again, I'm not going to pretend that I gained weight later once I got out of uniform and was not on the street as much. And so, me in a uniform later in the years, I finally got back into shape again, and I lost some weight. But I always told, when I made sergeant, I made lieutenant, I always told the guys, you could be way off post. You could be nowhere where you're supposed to be based on our deployment. But if you look sharp, the public doesn't know. But you could look like crap and be on post and being super diligent, and the public thinks you're a goofball.
Exactly.
Even though you are right spot on. And so I said, you have to look good. Your uniform has to look. Remember, Pete, when our blue pants, the guys wore them so much and so often they turned purple. They were so washed out and everything. And the shoes were scuffed up so bad. And we had the horrible duty jackets in the 80s and 90s. Oh, my God. The uniforms were terrible. And then we had, David, you're not going to believe this. Well, maybe you will. But I don't know what they did out in the west part of the country. But for 2 years in 86 and 87, we allowed our cops to wear baseball caps. Yeah. Which was the worst.
Yes.
Thing. Like, talk about lack of professionalism. So I hate the cargo pants. I hate the boots. I'm all into looking sharp, but not your dress blues, but just looking good, especially. And then when Bill Bratton came to transit, he gave us the commando sweaters. Man, I tucked my commando sweater into my Sam Brown gun belt. I never looked better in my life. Never looked better in my life.
Tommy, do you remember this? David, you're going to laugh when you hear this. If you had a Sam Brown belt in our time when we came out, you bought
you got a grip.
Well, no, but you weren't really supposed to wear it. What we used to have issued to us was basically picture your Strong, the company Strong that makes holsters, they make regular trouser belts. You wore your trouser belt to hold up your trousers. And
really?
You got another belt, the same kind of belt, a regular belt that was like 2 inches longer to be your gun belt. It was a regular pants belt. Which, I mean, if you wore when you holster everything, it would stretch like an inch per shift. But I mean, we weren't allowed to wear like the heavy duty leather belt.
Really?
Kind of,
Did you have to buy it? Did you have to buy it yourself, or do they get uniform allowance?
You buy it yourself, but they give you an allowance.
Yeah.
You want to hear a funny story? Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, the only thing they gave you for free was your badge, which you gave back at the end of your career, and your body armor. Everything else you paid for.
Well,
hold on a second, though. We got to talk about uniform allowances and holiday pay. All right. So we used to throw holiday parties in December in the New York City Police Department, transit, whatever it was. It didn't matter. Pre-merge, post-merge, it was all the same. And a lot of guys would not bring their spouses to these parties. But then on an occasion, they would. And there would be conversations. So we got a table of 10. Let's divvy it up. 5 couples, and they're sitting there, and one wife would lean over to the other, and goes, "I'm just so glad that the uniform allowance is coming in this month."
Oh,
and then the other one goes, "What do you mean a uniform allowance?" And she goes, "No, like once a year, there's an $1,100, spiff in the check every December for the uniform allowance for the year." And that's what they got to do. They're cleaning and buy new uniforms.
Sure.
And she's like, "I never knew about that." And she's like, "Oops, sorry." And then the holiday pay, there was one for 6 days in June and one for 5 days in December, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. 11 holidays were paid twice a year. And, this was before the direct deposits and everything. Yeah. So they didn't know anything about it. And then they're sitting there going, "Oh, the holiday pay's coming." Because the guys used to come home with cash. Right now. And I'll tell you how they cash their check. They used to cash their check in the bars. You know that, right? Yeah. So, and then they would be like, well, the holiday pay, and the other wives would be going, what do you mean a holiday pay? What is that? And so many guys got toasted for this. And then the last thing was what you could do prior to direct deposit of your paychecks, but you could start doing deductions into the municipal credit union of like a savings account. And so guys would take $100 every paycheck and it would go into the MCU. And then the regular check would come home, but you'd never have to show your spouse the receipt, you know, the partition. What's the other side of the check called? And all they would see was the total net amount. And so let's say it was, you know, $1,500. It was really $1,600, but the guy was putting $100 every pay period, so that's $200 a month into MCU. And they're going, well, what about the MCU account? And all of these guys got toasted for their slug funds and their holiday pay and all their uniform pays.
Yeah. So how to work at DPS, David? Did you guys get a uniform allowance, or did you just go get a new uniform, like if stuff wore out?
You know, they give you a monthly uniform allowance. No, it was a yearly uniform allowance. And if you ripped it or tore it in the line of duty, they would replace that immediately for you. It didn't come out of your uniform allowance. That's you get into scuffle out in the street, you tear your pants or your shirt, you or your sunglasses, or you break your watch. There's certain levels, but they would reimburse you for torn or damaged personal equipment that wasn't part of the uniform allowance.
Yeah. At ATF we had
American J pay stub. American J pay stub. Sorry, I drew a old man. You know, I had a moment.
That's fine. Yeah, no, we had, at ATF we had like a warehouse somewhere, and you got to order uniforms if something got damaged or something. I imagine the Marshals probably had something similar, but yeah, Unitech was the company.
So let's go back to the hiring stuff, because I want to get back to this.
Yeah.
So Ron Mason used to work in candidate assessment in the NYPD. And today in the NYPD, if you fail a drug test for weed at the time of hire, you have to sign a waiver and you could be retested in 30 days, because now it is legal to smoke in New York City, but forbidden in
Arizona.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild stuff.
Now, a chief of police, let's say a guy says, I think this it used to be 2 years on weed. I think the 6th month comes in next month. But a chief of police, let's say they get a great candidate, and the gal says, hey, listen, I smoked weed a year and a half ago, I moved on, I've done this and that. And the chief of police can go to the police standard and training and ask for a waiver. And the person comes in and the chief comes in, and there's some great stories there. I mean, things happen, and sometimes they'll overrule that and let them, get certified as a police officer. But I'm wondering if that, some of those, and I think nationwide, all state agencies are looking at these standards to say, listen, we're missing out on a lot of great candidates, and should we look at these our drug standards and all these different standards to get people in, because it's difficult for a lot of police forms to get people, because and another one is the process takes forever. I think they ought to contract that, because I don't when I applied to be a highway patrolman, I remember going down Phoenix, taking a written test. I passed that, and they said, come back, take an oral board. 2-3 weeks. Come back. Okay, I passed that. A couple of weeks later, come back and take a physical fitness test. Pass the physical fitness test. Okay, a couple of weeks later, come back and take a polygraph. Take the polygraph. Come back a couple of weeks, you had to take a psychological test. Pass that. I'm not sure how I passed that. I remember a question one time on what's it called, the
MMRT, was it?
What's that psychological test? I
thought it was RT, but I could be wrong.
Something like. They said, would you rather go hunting, or would you rather read a book? And I'm thinking, okay, what are they looking for here? I don't want to think that I want to go shoot people or this, and they want me to think I'd rather read a book to gain knowledge. And I'm thinking, well, if it's hunting season, I want to go hunting. So I can't remember how I answered, but it was all that kinds of questions. But pass the psychological test. Then you do the background, and then you put on a list. And then depending on where you're on the list, then they pick you up. So it took a long, in the Marshal Service, some people have been waiting 2-3 years to get before they get a date in the academy. And what happens? People get frustrated and say, or move on to other jobs, and
our turnaround was about 3 years as well. When we hired people the fastest, David, was during COVID, because other agencies were canceling classes. We had people sitting on the shelf, and it was like, all right, well, if NCI, because as you know, you got to fill a class down at FLETC, and each agency has a class, and those seats were freed up.
Yeah.
Hey, we got 48 seats just opened up. Can you fill them? Hell yeah. So we actually hired record numbers of agents during the 2 years of COVID.
Well, good for you. Yeah, it's very Anthony DiMaggio. What a great last name. I wish I had a great last name like that. Gonzales is boring.
You think of
DiMaggio? Come on,
Anthony DiMaggio. What a great name.
Yeah, so Anthony DiMaggio, lieutenant from Yonkers PD, just north of Pete. That's your territory, buddy.
Where I grew up.
Just north of. See, for me as a Brooklynite, I think Yonkers is upstate.
Yeah.
So and it's a tough town. Pete will tell you all about it. I think the cops are the real deal. I have some friends up there. We had a cold case of serial killer out of the Bronx that worked with some folks out of Yonkers. So it's all real, but still, for me, it's still upstate New York. So,
let me ask you a question, David. Getting back to the hiring stuff.
Yeah,
I know the hiring process is a pain in the ass for both agencies.
Yeah,
and I know you've been out for a little bit, but I mean, one of the things that's hit ATF of late that was unheard of during my time, it was attrition, people leaving. Like, we never had people jump ship to other agencies or to go to the private sector. Are the marshals dealing with that at all, where people are leaving before they get their pension, or not even going to? I know sometimes marshals would go to other agencies, but what's the status of the Marshal Service retention right now?
And that's a really good point. What I saw a lot of it in Arizona. Let's say some young man or woman from Yonkers, New York, wants to be a deputy marshal, gets sent to the border in Arizona. Tucson or Yuma, you know those places.
Yeah,
crazy. And they have to do 3 years before they can transfer. And before they can put in, and then there might not be any classes, and then they get homesick. Maybe they don't like the desert. Who knows? They want to be close to their family. So we had a lot of great deputy marshals that loved the job, but just we're in duty stations, and you had some in Texas and a lot of these places, these border towns where it's tough business, and maybe doing too much court, too much wood time, and they wanted to get out, but because of how busy, like a place like Tucson, the Tucson office or the Yuma office, which is right on the border, right at California, Mexico, and Arizona. So we would lose people, in that sense. Also to some local police departments, and then, but I would tell them, especially going to local, just hang in there. I mean, in 4 or 5 years, you'll be a 13, making good money. But you see that a lot, and I see that with a lot of the small departments around Arizona, and maybe you have it in other parts of the country where. Officers will move to bigger cities, or that have a pretty good salary. Plus, a lot of departments are given signing bonuses now.
Yeah,
$20,000-$30,000 for signing bonus to sign up.
Unbelievable.
It's tough, and
let's talk about that. Let's wrap this up on the hiring stuff and the crisis that you're so concerned about, David. I'm really glad that in the pre-show you talked about that. It's how important it is to you. How do we fix this? How do we resolve it? We talk about it on the Finest Unfiltered and Sal Greco show and the Executive Perspective all the time, the other 3 shows on this platform, where the best recruiter was always the active member who would come home and encourage their kids, their nieces, nephews, and neighbors to come on the job. I don't care what efforts they did anywhere else. I don't care if they went into the neighborhoods, they went to colleges. I don't care what they did. The best recruiting was coming from the active members. That does not happen anymore. How do we fix this going forward? And then I want to get back to a couple more career cases for you, because we are pushing an hour 40 right now. So I know it feels only like about a half an hour. Yeah. So it's wonderful. Great conversation. Really love your wisdom. But let's solve the recruiting problem. Let's get a couple more cases in.
Can I ask you a favor?
Yeah.
I have to see a man about a dog. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Give me a couple of minutes.
You got it.
Talk among yourselves. I'll be back in 1 minute.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. I am going to. Yep. So, Pete, getting back to the hiring stuff, just on our side, getting back to what's going on in the Fed space, as you know it. I mean, the local space. I mean, active cops are not coming home and encouraging their kids, nieces, nephews, and neighbors to do it.
Not in communities where you have politicians that will throw you under the wood chipper. What parent wants to see their kid indicted for going out there and doing their job the right way, and then things getting contorted by some politician? I mean, look, go back to, I know it came up during one of our episodes, Michael Brown, right? That cop did his job. Look what happened to him. I know he didn't get indicted, but he certainly went through hell. And there are other stories that are exactly like that. So
well, he's not a cop anymore, right? So that's the bottom line with that. And the finest Unfiltered has talked about all of these cases before. They talked about Pantaleo. Who else would have done anything different than to take that guy down? And I will spend an episode. I know we try to bring the careers back. I will spend and go deep on Derek Chauvin and the fact that he's been convicted without a postmortem examination that called it a homicide. I will go and I will rip apart all the perjury that took place in that trial, and yet he's still convicted. And even if he got a pardon from the president, which he won't get, but even if he did, it would be a federal, and he still hits on the state, and he's in jail. And that is a travesty. That is an injustice. And I will have that conversation. Watch your documentaries, Fall in Minneapolis. It is crazy. Well, and so they've destroyed this profession by cops doing their job.
Yeah, and Ron hit it in the comments there. It's a lack of integrity at the top too, because you have police chiefs who will throw their people into the wood chipper because they've become more politicians. Not all police chiefs, obviously. There's some great ones out there, but a lot of them, they're politicians. They're not cops anymore. They're not going to stand up for their people, and that's why. Look, seasoned people like us would tell our kids no. But unfortunately, and well, actually, maybe I should say, thank God. Thank God there's still some kids out there that saw what we did, find it to be noble, and despite that, still want to go into the profession. I would have never encouraged my kids to go into law enforcement, yet they're both in law enforcement.
Yeah. I mean, my son got on in 2018. Late, and then by the time he got out, I was on the street. It was 2019, and then COVID hit in 2020. And he calls me up. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" I go, "Don't worry about it, son. COVID is your moment." And I wrote an article on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share it. Where we had our crack wars, then we had our CompStat period, where all of a sudden things were legitimate. Like you could do anything you wanted before Giuliani and the CompStat era, right? All precinct commanders were concerned about prior to Giuliani and CompStat and Bratton and Maple was don't have a scandal. Crime could go up, crime could go down. It doesn't matter, whatever. Guns, shootings, homicides, doesn't matter. Just don't have a scandal, right? Don't have a 106 precinct stun gun case. Don't have a dirty 30. Don't have a Michael Dowden 7.5. Everything will be fine. So that accountability changed everything. And that was a big cultural shift to change and really to adapt. And then we had 2001, and for everyone who's paying attention, Joey Herbert is coming on August 26th, a week from today. Joey Herbert, retired deputy chief, Joint Terrorist Task Force, one of the greatest investigators, not the greatest, because I don't know anyone could ever earn that moniker. However, one of the greatest investigators, detective commanders and detective sergeants, that I certainly ever met. Wonderful, wonderful man. He's going to come on next week, and he's going to talk about exactly that. Is these capers, and all of this stuff is, we've lived in a period, we were born into a period where things were very much the same for 20, 30, 40 years, right? I'm going to bring David back in.
Oh, there you go.
All right. And then let us finish our story, David. So then all of a sudden the 80s hit, and then the crack wars hit, and then crime skyrocketed from 85-ish to 92, 93. Then Giuliani and Bratton and Maple came in and fixed it and held us accountable with the Comstat period. And then we had to adjust to that. So we had to adjust to the crack wars. We had to adjust to Comstat and accountability and high oversight, which I am thoroughly in support of. And then we had to adjust to counterterrorism in 2001 and 9/11 stuff. We are lucky. I consider myself lucky to have been born in probably the most dynamic changes of a 20 to 30 year period that anyone has ever seen in law enforcement. You could have been a cop from 1920 to 1950, and it was pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yep.
However, from 85 to 95 to 05 to 2025, this has been wild.
Golden age.
It's been wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
And look, the other thing, and we spoke about this before, and David, I'd love to hear your take on it. When I came on the job, our senior leaders were old, seasoned men and women, many of them white-haired or bald, like myself. They had a lot of experience from which to draw their decision-making processes from. You know, captains were 30, 35 years on the job. Now you go to the NYPD, they're 30-year-old captains. You know, so I don't think that they have the leadership experience today that we had the benefit of having in our time on the job. And I'm curious how you feel about that, David, especially being a seasoned leader. And I know you're still engaged with the profession. You were also, in addition to the marshal,
David goes,
director for a while. So
yeah.
Before David goes, I only want a captain with 50 years on the job.
What was that? I'm sorry.
I only want to work for a captain that has 50 years on the job, like you, David.
I remember when I was a young trooper, lieutenant gets on the air, calls my badge number to meet with him. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to fire me. And he jumps in the car with me and he said, let's go down the interstate. I'm scared to death because the lieutenant was like a god, absolute god. And he's asking me about, me, family, where he come from. And then he'd say, what was that car that just drove by us? What kind of car was it? Year and make. And I'm like, you need to be aware. And he knew every car that passed him, he knew what it was. He was sending a message to me, But you're right. And the other thing is, especially, I see this not only in I think all levels of government, state, a lot of the troops feel like they're the city council, the Arizona, the legislatures, the Congress aren't supporting them.
Correct.
And they said, well, why should I go work for an organization where I'm not getting supported? And they move on to something else. We're missing a lot of great candidates because they're out there. We have to go get them. And you're right, Tom. You mentioned about the internal candidates going out, and we go to the colleges. You go to the military, people that are coming out of the military, who are great candidates. But we need all kinds of people that with computer backgrounds, because our profession is changing so much. Artificial intelligence is going to be the thing of the future even for policing. It's getting there now. The way we collect data, what data is going to show us. Artificial intelligence is going to be huge for leaders and the men and women on the street, and we need to start preparing for that. I remember when I was lieutenant or captain, and all these changes were going on, and you realize that we missed a lot of the. We forgot to keep our head, to the wall to find out what was going on. We missed the changes in the cultures that were moving here, the immigration changes. The gay and lesbian community was a huge deal that we didn't see coming and it didn't adapt for. and dealing. Also, one of the biggest issues is mental illness. These poor cops that go on the street, I see them all day, and you get these people that have mental illness. What do you do with these guys? And you can't arrest your way out of this. I know local cops. They see a homeless person carrying pushing a cart with all this junk. They're home. And if the guy commits a crime, the cop's tied up for 4 or 5 hours because he has to inventory everything in his home. And so the supervisors don't want that, so they just kind of move on. But when we came on, we wanted to put bad guys in jail. That was it. We wanted to put bad guys in jail. Now, so many calls now are involving people with mental issues, and whether it's drug or anything else. And it's very. Did New York have a statute at one time where it was illegal to be drunk and disorderly in public?
Yeah, disorderly conduct was what you would normally charge them with, or having an open container if they were drinking it in front of you.
Yeah. I remember when I first started, we had Arizona had a drunk and disorderly. You could put the person in jail for a little, 5, 6, 8 hours. It gets them off the street so they don't get killed. Then the legislature changed and said, being drunk or alcoholic isn't a crime, so they did away with it. And then we find these people were getting run over, they're getting killed, and then what do you do? And then also, if somebody had a lot of had some major, we're showing distress over some mental issues, you could take them to a local mental hospital, check them in, get a court order for it. Now you can't do anything anymore. So they're out on the streets, and poor cops who are not trained for this have to deal with this.
So they say that it's not compassionate to arrest these guys because they're mentally ill and they might be in the street. But like what? And to your point, what, they're getting hit by cars, they're overdosing, they're laying on the street, dying. What? That's compassion? They need help. And so law enforcement, the way I look at it is, we're like, if there's 10 things to do, I don't know if there's more or less, but there's 10 things to do. Law enforcement on the street is the last bastion of survival. Like you all have missed the first 9 things.
Right.
Like, and I don't want to arrest a homeless person. I don't want to arrest a mentally ill person.
Exactly.
I don't want to take them off the street. I don't want to force them into a medical facility, whatever the situation is. And so I know in transit, we used to have a homeless outreach unit, and we used to do a bunch of stuff. And it was like, all right, is it freezing out, 32 degrees above, 32 degrees below? And then you would ask them, do you know where you are? It's 32 degrees out. It's freezing. Do you know where you are? Who's the president of the United States? What's the date?
Yep.
You ask them basic questions if they are even coherent. If they are fully intact and they know where they were and they know what they're doing, and they say, no, I'm willing to risk it. Less than 32 degrees. Do you want options? Do you want to go to a shelter? Do you want to go to a hospital? Like, there were a whole bunch of things, and I don't know all the protocols. I don't remember it. I didn't work in it, but it was a compassionate, very thoughtful way of approaching. But you can't have resources for you. The idea of having encampments in these places, and how insane does it have to be that there is a website right now where you can see a map with all of the icons of where human fecal matter is plotted on a map in San Francisco.
Right.
That's how, but everyone seems to think that's okay. It's normal. It's crazy. So listen, we don't get into that. Last thing before we shift, we got 2 more cases I want to talk to you about, David. I know Pete does too. But can we solve this recruitment problem? Yes or no? Real quick, while I shift over, I'm going to pull the screen up.
I think we can solve this recruitment problem, and I think a lot of it is understanding the type of individuals that are coming through now. And you're going to have individuals that have never been somebody mentioned something, never been in a fight in their life, and and sometimes, and this is my what I saw with a lot of new police officers coming in. I remember I was talking to a chief of police here in the Valley, in Phoenix, the Phoenix area, and the chief wanted to go to 2-person cars, for safety. The officers didn't want to do it. You know why?
Didn't trust each other.
Well, they could spend a lot of time on their phone doing what doing during downtime. They just wanted to be by themselves and because they weren't real social.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of cops at a family dispute, especially the younger ones now, don't know how to talk to people.
Right.
So we have to understand what our needs are and go after those men and women from all walks of life, but understanding that it's a tough business, and things are going to go to hell, and they're out there. They're absolutely out there, and it's going to take some time for us to, I think, in the United States to move towards that goal, because I think there's a lot of young men and women who look forward, would love to be police officers. I think they just need.
Is there one or two people or one entity, one position? Like, what agency? Is it IACP? Is it PERF? Is it Major City Chiefs? ASHA? Is there the president? Is it coming from the presidents? Because we're going to talk about the DC takeover too tonight before we wrap up. But like, who is going to say, I'm running this flag, and like someone's got to take a leadership position on fixing a recruitment problem? Or is each agency on their own? 18,000 law enforcement agencies got to do their own recruitment? Or is there a bigger message coming from top down?
I think a little bit of both, but I'm a firm believer that all politics is local, also.
Yep.
And for example, I have a nephew, got out of the Marines, wanted to be a police officer, and I was recruiting him. Hey, let's come to the Marshals. Come to the Marshals, because he'd been great. And he goes, Dave. He calls me Theo, actually.
Uncle.
I want to work for Phoenix Police Department. I grew up here. This is my community. I want to be, and he became a Phoenix police officer and is very proud. And he'll be, and he's a good one. He's been out on his own about a year now, and he loves the job. And it's those kind of people, and they see that, a Hispanic guy that joined the Marines, came out and wanted to still serve, And there's a lot of people out there. We just need to get to them. And I do lecturing at universities, University of Arizona, where I went, and Arizona State University here in the Phoenix area, and teach these classes. And people are interested. They're absolutely interested. But I don't think there's anybody touching them on the shoulder and bringing them in. And if you find a good, this is something that really bothered me when I was the Marshal. I had a young woman. She was a Navajo woman with a college degree come in. She goes, listen, I want to be a deputy marshal. And I got like, how many college educated Navajo women? She would have been, oh my God, the wonderful opportunity. So I called headquarters in DC. Hey, we got this person. Let me hire her. Let me do something. Let's get her in. And they, policy is and policy that and blah, blah, blah. And, she has to do this. She has to do that. So she got frustrated, walked across the street to the bureau. Oh. They snapped her up. And I don't blame them. No, They brought her in. Hey, come on in. We'll sign you up right now.
Oh, God.
And it just still hurts that we lost that one.
Yeah.
But
all right, I was a little premature. All right, we'll figure out. One last, one last comment before, because you said a Marine and coming out. Eric Dim, again, one of the co-hosts on Finest Unfiltered, former Marine, talks about masculine tendencies, and both male and female, right? And so, the big guys who are coming out of the military, again, tattoos is part of it.
Oh, yeah.
And even women who are able to do the job, we all want them to meet the standards clearly, but have to have the masculine traits of being aggressive and being, as Eric, and I'm going to quote Eric, intrusive, the ability to engage, right? And not just be responsive. So do you think, and I want a really quick answer on this because we really are getting late, and Do you think that there is a tendency for law enforcement across the country to not want to hire those kind of people? Is there an overt or is there a tacit approach towards not hiring those people when they walk in? You know, a former college athlete, a former military member coming in, high testosterone, high masculinity traits, even for females who are aggressive. Do you think there's a concerted effort to suppress that?
You know, I didn't see that at the Marshal Service. If they make these standards, because you need those people. You know, you need people going to be kicking doors and do all kinds of stuff. And but I didn't see it at the Marshal Service. Have you guys seen that?
No, I'll tell you what. I'm going to get people mad at me. Not you, David. You won't be mad at Tommy. I blame Perf, frankly, for a lot of that stuff where they went from, we shouldn't call our people warriors anymore.
Oh, yeah.
They dialed it back. You know, so, but I can tell you for the Marshals, for ATM, for some federal agencies, the Marshals Academy is no joke. Yeah. You go down there and you get brutalized. I mean, it's like boot camp, ATF Academy. Yeah. Well. But then again, there are some other entities where their academies like going to college. So, you know, I think it depends on the agency. But when you look at the broader profession, I blame Perf for a lot of the softening or the pussification of law enforcement to some degree. IACP, not as much. But, you know, I think they need to get their heads together and realize that this is not a profession for timid people.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely.
All right, we're going to leave it at this. So Ron Layson, one of the biggest issues he saw was with the prior military, getting military to release records, and the military labels anyone with combat zone as disabled to a certain percentage due to PTSD. That is a hurdle. We'll leave it at that. I was premature before I brought up a case. I know you want to talk about it, David. I hope you're okay. If you want to shut it down, we'll shut it down. But I know it's a case close to your heart. Deputy US Marshal Chase White.
Oh, I tell you, 22 years I was a marshal. I wanted to go through with nobody getting hurt or killed, and you know, Chase was shot and killed in Tucson by a guy with some mental issues. And you know what happened is Tucson PD came to us, and there was this guy who was stalking some detectives, and he was upset with them, and he's filing all kinds of claims. And Tucson, and they had they charged him, and the Tucson PD says, "Hey, can you pick this guy up for it, because he's going to cause some more problems for the agency." So we went to arrest him, surrounded his house, and he was inside his house, and it was getting dusk, and Chase White, there was a light kind of shining on the marshals as they came in. He went to knock the light out or move it. When his arm was up, suspect shot him in the armpit, went through his heart, and killed him. And Chase had a wife and 3 kids. Just a terrible you know, situation for a great man. Military guy, very highly educated, degree, master's. Actually, the next day, 2 days after he shot, he was supposed to be. He was given orders to go overseas, and he didn't have to work that day, but he knew they were doing some roundup, especially with this, and wanted to be out there. And he lost his life on that day when he didn't have to be out there.
Yes. Well, rest in peace, Deputy U.S. Marshal White. We're certainly with you. Do you know anything about the family? What's going on? Where are they at right now?
They're still in Tucson. Our office, especially in Tucson, very close to them, and they're doing well under the circumstances, and just great people.
May God hold them close. So,
yes.
David, I know we talked about something that's sensitive. Death of a hero. That's not something that we like to talk about. You know, I always like to believe that a hero only truly dies when the last time their name is mentioned. So
right.
Let's keep mentioning that hero.
Exactly.
But talking about something so heavy, I got to ask, in your time as the marshal or in DPS, like what one case stands out in your mind as like your crown jewel, like the case that really just puts you on cloud nine when you think about it, something that just fills you with pride, that makes you realize that you got into the right profession? What would that one instance be, the big one that really touches your heart?
You know, there are a lot of them, especially where I'll tell you about a big one, but there are numerous where somebody abducted a child, and we were able to track those individuals down from the various ways that how we do that.
Yeah.
Those are really good. But there's a case of, the suspect was named McCluskey. Were you here when this happened, where these 3 people escaped from prison up in Kingman? 3 murderers.
Yes.
His one of the girlfriends of the murderers, McCluskey, threw a bag over the fence. I don't know how this happens in this day and age. With wire cutters.
Mm-hmm.
They escaped. They worked their down to Interstate 40. They see a 18-wheeler tractor trailer, on the parked on. The guy was asleep. They take him. They kidnap him. Take him down to Flagstaff. They release him. They let him go. They go on a crime spree all over the Western. And this was like every day on national news. They were like the modern day Bonnie and Clyde. And one of the group, after they split up, was arrested in Yellowstone Park. McCluskey and his girlfriend, they were running all over, and we were right behind them. We're tracking them as much as we can financially. They committed an armed robbery of a shop in Arkansas, and then we found out McCluskey was a mama's boy, and his mother lived north of Phoenix here, in a rural area, and we know that she had given him aid when he first got out of prison, money, clothes, and things like that. So I had her arrested. There we go. There's McCluskey. And we knew that she helped him out. So we arrested her on aiding and abetting. And primarily I made that decision because we didn't know where he was, but we knew he'd come back to the Phoenix area to take care of his mom in some way or another. And sure enough, they were headed back this way, and they camped out in the Pine Top, Sholo area up there, where they were arrested. And in between that time, they kidnapped a elderly man and woman who were out with their camper, the trailer. And this was in New Mexico. They killed them, drove around with their bodies in the travel trailer in the back, lit them, put it on fire. Just absolute. These 3 were all in prison for murder when they escaped. And I'm glad to say John McCluskey, he didn't get the death penalty, which he should have, but he died in the Supermax in Colorado. And good riddance to them and that bunch. But that was the case. I mean, it was every night. It was national news that we were hunting down this Bonnie and Clyde group. They don't show his girlfriend, which is also his cousin. But anyways,
well, that explains a lot.
So. Exactly. Yeah, Province was arrested and we got him up in Yellowstone and Renwick in Colorado after a chase with the local police department, and McCluskey and his girlfriend here back in Arizona, coming back around to see what he can do to help out his mother. So that was one that went on for like 3 weeks. It was just nonstop, where you don't sleep for 3 weeks. And we've you guys have been after these guys a long time, but that was one that really, especially the couple that they killed and butchered and burned up in their own trailer. Just sad.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
All right. And if I can, David, last one and last case, I think we can squeeze in, and then we'll go a little bit into the DC federalization and deputizing of National Guard a little bit, see what's going on there. Like Pete, we haven't talked about it, so I'd love to get your perspectives. But the shooting of U.S. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, and then Judge John Knoll. So,
yeah, Judge John Roll was good friend of mine. He was the chief judge in Arizona. Okay, you okay?
Yeah, go.
Are we gonna do this?
Yep. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay.
There we go.
There he is.
We'll start with the judge, and then we'll go.
Wonderful man. It was a Saturday. Judge Roll was a devout Catholic, went to church every Saturday at the same time, 9 to 10. And he went to church at 9, got out, and Gabby Giffords was holding a little community event at a Safeway grocery store, a couple blocks from Judge Roll's house. And when he got back from church, he told his wife, "Hey, Congressman Gabby Giffords down the street. I'm going to go thank her for the support she's given for the state of Arizona on the southwest border issues." And she was very, very big on that. So he gets down there, and this is on video. It's about that. She's talking to. There's a big line of people in the queue waiting to speak with with Congresswoman Giffords, and you can see Judge Roll walking up, and he's waiting for her to take a break, so he could just thank her. And he's talking to her chief of staff. About that time, the shooter gets up, shoots Gabby Giffords first in the head. Next shot, he points. He didn't know who Judge Roll was. He just shot Judge Roll right in the heart. Judge Roll died right there. And then the bandit goes down and starts shooting people down the line as they're in queue, and until he was finally wrestled down. But I was really frustrated because he was obviously dead there at the scene, and the people doing the investigation let him lie out there for 7-8 hours. I didn't think there was any need for that, but wonderful judge, and he was very pro law enforcement, but he was fair to everybody that came into his court. And Gabby Giffords was a wonderful person. I remember when I'd go to D.C. On Marshal business, I would do courtesy visits to the senators and the Congress men and women there. I always loved to see Congressman Giffords. So I had a meeting with her about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I go to her office, and she comes out. She goes, "David, have you had breakfast?" I said, "No, Judge, I just got here from the hotel." She goes, "Well, let's go down to the cafeteria and have breakfast." So we're sitting there having breakfast, and she's looking at me kind of strange, and she goes, "Hey, can you meet me over here by where the utensils are?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, okay, what's going on?" So we get around for the public can't see, and she reaches up to my nose and takes a nugget out of my nose, if you know what I mean. Okay. And puts it in a napkin and throws it away. She goes, "David, I know you had some meetings afterwards. I didn't want you to be embarrassed." And I thought, I love this woman. I will follow her to hell and back. My wife won't even do that for me, but Congressman Giffords pulled one out of my nose for me, and I thought, man, what a great person.
That's a down to earth person, for sure.
Yep.
For sure. So I know this must have been an incredible amount of time. And then it's my understanding that your marshals were responsible for Jared Lochner's protection.
Yes. Yes. Yep. He was an interesting individual. And I remember being in the courtroom at one of his hearings, and you could just see his body twitching and his legs going up and down and just losing it in court. And he was and you're used to seeing people like that, but Lochner, he had his issues, and how long he's going to be in this one of the federal mental hospitals till they cure him whatsoever. But to him, it was just another day. That he didn't. I don't think he cared from watching him. It didn't mean anything to him.
Yeah. So, being involved on the private sector for a good number of years, and chasing gun crime on the private side of things, helping our active law enforcement, Gabby Giffords does have a very powerful website.
Yes.
that tracks all the gun violence. And again, like Pete and I, one of the impetus for this podcast is one of the things Pete and I talk about on our weekly personal calls that started this whole podcast thing was they want, and I'm not saying Giffords and Senator Kelly or anyone on any particular side of the aisle, but they want more gun control, more gun control. Like, you don't even enforce the gun laws that are on the books now.
Exactly.
I'm going to punt to Pete on this one.
Well, you know that, I mean, one of the things I blew the whistle on was we had people that we were investigating for years who were violating the Gun Control Act, trafficking firearms, felons in possession of firearms, and we couldn't get them prosecuted federally. So, I agree. And look, David was there, and look, what I'll say is, when I was getting my teeth kicked in for blowing the whistle, there were a lot of people, because it was politically convenient to keep Pete Friscelli at arm's length, you know?
Yeah.
David never turned his back on me, which was something I appreciated, because he was always a stand-up guy. But I have a problem with that. Prosecute people with the laws you have on the books. And if you're not going to do that, how dare you ask for more laws?
Yeah. I agree with you. And I get very frustrated when they come out. We need more gun laws, and you're right. We have plenty of gun laws on the books. Enforce them.
Yeah.
And then if it's not enough, then we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, but they're there.
Yeah.
Everything you need is there. But they just kick the can down the road on gun laws and immigration laws.
Mm-hmm.
We need comprehensive immigration laws. They're there. It's just a way, I think, sometimes for politicians to move it down for another year or two. But they say the same thing every single year.
Right.
Let's give us immigration, new immigration laws and new gun laws when there's plenty of these laws on the books already.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is turn that, and I'll get that website before we wrap up. And her website is very informative on the cost, the number of guns, the number of suicides, the number of accidentals. Like, it's super informative. And you sit there and go, okay, we clearly have a gun problem.
Yeah.
But it's not just crime guns, it's all guns, and who's responsible for them, and what are we going to do? And then, of the people who are committing crimes, let's go after them.
Yes.
And then I have a lot of personal opinions on who's allowed to carry a gun. That's fine. Second Amendment, fine. But as a former investigator with a lot of gun crimes in New York City, you know what I was most frustrated with was, this gun was recovered. We did a trace. It was lost in 2012. And then we called the last owner of record, and he goes, "Yeah, it was stolen in a burglary." Okay, where's the burglary report? Well, I didn't report it.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm a supporter of concealed carries for people who want to apply for it and pass the background checks. But at the same time, you have to be accountable for the firearms you put into circulation. What do you think?
Exactly. In Arizona, anybody can carry concealed. You don't need any license, nothing, just, and so.
But if your gun got stolen out of your glove box in your car, do you think there's an obligation to report it?
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of guns are. Burglaries are
not the case across the country, though.
Yeah.
Jeez. All right, let's do this. So the US Marshals, I took it off their LinkedIn post. They're deputizing National Guard in DC.
Right.
There's the Justice Department is investigating DC police over fake crime data.
Right.
That was the impetus. They're saying there's an emergency in the White House and crime. DC police is saying where crime is down 26%.
Right.
And so the next thing you know, here we are, the federal government, President Trump, Bondi, they're going in and they're deputizing marshals. And this was yesterday on the US Marshals website. LinkedIn site. They're deputizing. What are your thoughts, David?
Well, I have deputized large groups of some National Guard officers from around the country on major events like Super Bowls here, things like that, because we have the authority to do that. The only agency that does. Now, as far as using them in DC, obviously there's a little bit of theatrics in this, but I think the crime stats, this is my personal opinion, are not accurate. And I think a lot of police departments will, they shade things here and there, but you can't hide the murders. Okay.
Right.
And Washington, D.C., I think one of the highest capitals in the world for murders, more than Mexico City, more than Bogota. They're the top. And I understand where you could take a armed robbery and make it a simple, a simple assault and things like that. But my personal opinion is I think the crime stats have been cooked a little bit, and you guys been to DC? It's a mess.
My wife and I used to walk around DC every weekend. That's where we got our steps in. We loved it. We don't want it anymore. David, I agree with you. I think it's two things. I think it's the stats are fudged, and I also think the people that live there, because I'm watching the news and I'm seeing people of color saying, "Hey, thank God, these people are here." So what I think happened is you have fudge stats coupled with people who gave up calling the police because they don't believe the police were going to do anything. I mean, they have one of the worst homicide clearance rates in the country.
Right.
So I think that's why you're hearing crime is down, is it's not being reported. Plus you have the fudging of the numbers, but we don't feel safe going to DC. And look, under HR 218, I can carry, but I'm not going to expose my wife to that kind of danger.
No.
We're going to walk miles upon miles every weekend. We haven't been there in years.
It seems like other than the Northwest part, a certain areas of North, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing a lot of people don't realize, like when I was with ATF in New York, we had National Guard people assigned to our gun center.
We did too.
They helped with tracing. They helped with, running rap sheets. They did a lot of things. They didn't go hands-on. They weren't out there doing search warrants with us. But there are things that you can use the Guard for.
Absolutely.
That are not law enforcement or the general things that people expect, kicking in doors, arresting people. It's basically a force multiplier.
Yeah, we had when I was with the DPS, we had many dozens and dozens of National Guard that did all these great administrative jobs, intelligence, positions that they're great, and I think they'll always be there. But sometimes especially in the DC area with National Guard, and I'm not saying this because with Trump, it's just whatever he does, he's going to get attacked no matter what, and so I think a lot of it is that, and I think the majority of the citizens in DC probably do appreciate that. And then when you get paid protesters showing up, to just attack everything that goes on in this country right now, when it was to for people to sit behind and billionaires to sit behind the scenes, it's just not right.
Well, David, look, if you look at the footage, going back to the footage and seeing the interviews of the people of color saying, "Thank God the cops are here. Right. We need more of this." When you look at the footage of the protesters, I laugh because, again, I've walked DC for hours. It is a predominantly people of color city, largely African-American. You look at the footage of those protesters, it's hard to find an African-American in the crowd.
Yes. And I know they probably don't live there either. Yeah.
No, exactly. These are paid protesters who are coming in from wherever. I'm sure some of them from Georgetown, college kids or whatever. But look, a very dear friend of mine once said when we was talking about like President Trump, I go to a restaurant and I like the restaurant doesn't mean I like everything on the menu. I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump does.
Sure, yeah.
But look, restoring order is a no-brainer. Protecting the border is a no-brainer. So I do agree with, but when you look at the politics and you look at the media now, Donald Trump could cure cancer tomorrow, and they would just say, "Well, that's just because he caused it in the first place." I mean,
put a bunch of doctors, out of work. Yeah.
So I know it's getting late, David.
Well, so I want to chime in, and David, if you got to drop, you drop. But no, so Walls put the National Guard out in Minnesota when it was finally too much. So it's not like it's unprecedented. Do I think DC was in the state of emergency that needed the deputization of the US Marshals to do that for the National Guard? I don't think it was that much of an emergency.
Yeah.
However, something needed to be done, and I don't know the politics behind it. But what I do know is Black, African American, brown, white, whoever you are, Hispanic, you have a God-given right to live peaceably. And anything that infringes on that, I believe the government has a responsibility to protect that.
Absolutely.
And when you're allowing 100, where are we? August, over 100 kids, over 90% of them are African American or Hispanic in Washington, D.C. right now, have been shot and killed, most of them children.
Yep.
And when I say children, like less than 25, I'm sorry. I don't know how you're on any other side of this issue.
Yeah.
And it's not a Republican or a Democrat. I remember the Democrats in the 90s calling these kids super predators and calling them and saying we need a crime bill, and Clinton signing it, and Biden calling them, super predators, and Hillary Clinton. And so they were for this. And so stop with the politics. People should be able to sit on their front porch and not have to duck gunfire. I remember standing in front of a housing development in the Tompkins houses in Brooklyn, New York, and the mother said to me, well, my guys were out doing a canvas on a shooting, and she said, well, we heard the shots, and I told my babies, make sure you jump inside the bathtub.
Yeah.
Nobody should live like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Not in the United States of America.
Yeah.
The first rule of government is to protect its citizens. First rule. Yeah. And we've kind of gotten away from that a lot lately. And politics have gotten, we're so divided in this country right now. We forgot what is important and what isn't, and then the police, Peter, you mentioned this earlier on something. We're caught in the middle of everything. We take the heat for everything. Every decision a politician makes, we take the heat. And the public, then they start attacking us. And those poor ICE guys doing their job, around the country, getting attacked, and they're getting doxxed and stuff like that. Give me a break, Well,
it's refreshing to see them fighting back a little bit, though. I will admit, I do laugh a little bit when I see some of the footage of one of these protesters or somebody tries to put hands on them and gets knocked on their backside. But that's refreshing.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Mike, I think my wife's calling me for dinner, or take her to dinner here, So,
brother, I am honored that you would join us.
No, I enjoy it. 2.5 hours, that went quick.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. And look, 2.5 hours of time from a busy man like yourself.
I'm not that busy.
Yeah.
Hey, tomorrow your birthday.
David, I got to be honest with you. You got the most law enforcement experience, and you've held on the longest. You got more stamina than all these previous lightweights that we've had before this. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, coming from the high country of northern Arizona, being born in that rarefied air.
Oh, that's dry air, right?
Well, that's Phoenix. But hey, Pete, tomorrow your birthday?
Yes, sir. Tomorrow.
Oh my God! Well, happy birthday to you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
So, can I just say, it's also my mother's birthday. She passed away in 2001. So she'd be 87 right now. So, so Pete,
happy
you
birthday.
and my mother share the same birthday.
How about that? To your mother, Thomas.
That's why I knew I liked it. I knew I liked it.
Salute.
So let's do some house. David, if you got to drop, just drop. Do the Irish goodbye. Just go. Don't even worry about it.
Okay,
but if you don't want to do the Irish goodbye and you want to hang on for this, we got to do some house cleaning stuff,
All right.
So we're always promoting Pete's book, Peter J.
I have it. I need to get a signed one, though.
I will sign it for you gladly.
Okay. You take care, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah,
David.
found on Amazon, Google Books, Simon & Schuster, Barnes & Noble, or www.peterjforcelli.com. And then if you want to follow The Finest Unfiltered and all the shows at Finest Unfiltered on YouTube X 10-4 Tavern for us. Pete and I are heavy on LinkedIn. So you can get us at LinkedIn, Peter Forcelli, Tom Joyce, Tom-Joyce-NYPD retired. And then also we have a page, 10-4 Tavern Podcast on LinkedIn, 10-4 Tavern on Instagram, and at 10-4 Tavern on Facebook, all the platforms. And then hang on for our outro, and you'll see Sal Greco. Let's see, what's today? Tuesday. So tomorrow morning, 8:05, the finest Unfiltered, Eric and John. Not sure what's going on with them because Eric's been sick, not feeling so great. So there's been some fill-ins, but you'll get a great show tomorrow. And then Ron Layson and Rob Lukash for the executive perspective. There's Detective from a second grader from ESU, 17 years in ESU. So it's bound to be great stories tomorrow night. And then Sal Greco every Tuesday and Thursday at 1:05 Eastern time. Pete, any final thoughts before I go to the outro?
No, I'm just thrilled to see David. I haven't seen him in years. We've spoken over the phone. Like I said, he was good to me when he didn't have to be. Both when I was a brand new guy, he could have told me, hey, rookie, pound sand, you're a brand new supervisor. But also, like I said, during the Fast and Furious days, that he had my back and was always a gentleman, always reached out to see how I was doing. Wasn't politically correct to do that at the time. So he's a cop's cop. I was glad he would join us.
Well, we got a steady flow. We're almost at 425 live viewers, which is pretty awesome. We'll crank. We're always looking for that 1,000 viewers. Puts us in a really good place. We really want to share these good stories of all of these veterans who have lived fantastic careers. So thank you for that. With that, please stay tuned for the outro. The outro's got great music, and it's our lineup on thefinestunfiltered.com. So, Pete, talk to you in a bit.
You got it, brother.